Welcome back to the Casual GM podcast. I am your host, Drew, and with me, as always, my co-host, Mike. Mike, how are you?
Just as handsome as ever, Drew. Yourself?
I have no complaints.
Excellent. That's good.
So, where do you want to start this week, Mike?
Well, let's start by giving a shout out to our new subs, which is actually singular, not plural. Matthew Turner. So many thanks, Matthew. He comes from Roar of the Lions UK, from across the pond. So thank you for subscribing. Tell your friends. And then I guess, do we want to kind of start with a week 7 review, kind of talk about the game a little bit?
Sure, that sounds great.
Let's do it.
So we played the Dolphins, and the Dolphins ended up winning 31-27, I believe. And Tua had a very good game. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle were nigh uncoverable, except by Jeff Okudah, who they just
it would go to the opposite sides of the field.
And to be honest, like, this was my concern. So, like, when we did our preseason schedule review, where we kind of picked what we thought, I was worried that even if Amani Araraway was playing at the level that he was last season, and Mike Hughes came in and was, a good signing or whatever, I was still concerned that their speed was going to be something that was just not going to be able to be matched in a one-on-one setting, not going to be able to be taken away by a scheme. Like, it's just one of, if not the most dangerous weapons in the NFL. And it turns out that the season so far has been kind of a nightmare for the Lions, especially in the secondary. We had serious regression from Amani Araraway. Jerry Jacobs was injured coming into the season, is only now seeing game reps.
Yep.
Tracy Walker was lost. Kirby Joseph is playing quite well in his presence. Deshaun Elliott did not play last week. And but Jeff Okudah has been what you'd hope. He's exceptional in the run game. They're not throwing at him much. And yet somehow the Dolphins were still able to basically say, whichever one of these two amazing athletes is not being covered by Jeff Okudah is who we will target. And it led them to 31 points. Now, the Lions went into the locker room at halftime with a lead 27-17, I believe, up by 10.
Yep.
But then failed to score any points whatsoever in the second half. And ultimately, the Dolphins came out in the second half. They scored 2 touchdowns. That proved to be the difference. Lions lose yet another 1-score game.
Yeah.
So,
shout out to Zakwa. Thanks for
Zakwa in the chat.
We're definitely going to talk Hawk here in a little bit.
Yes.
We're not ignoring you. We will definitely talk that.
Yeah. It's on the horizon. So, all in all, I still think the team played well. I mean, like, I put money on the Dolphins to win the game because I was convinced that there was nothing that they were going to do to be able to match their speed. I was exceptionally surprised the way that the first half played out, and I thought even if they have a bad second half, they're going to be able to maintain this, right? Up 10.
Yeah.
Weren't able to do it. Weren't able to do it, unfortunately.
There wasn't a lot of controversy in the game, other than, I think, one play, and it did kind of turn the tide a little bit, and that was the 4th and 2 in the second half, where instead of, we had 3 wideouts. Instead of going to either the short guys or even running, he could have probably ran. He throws a 40-yard bomb into the end zone, misses the guy, overthrew him a little bit. It would have been a great catch, but like, that to me is Goff in a nutshell, right? When it comes to crunch time, under pressure situations, he makes inexplicable decisions and then executes poorly.
So I guess I have a little different take on that one. So I watched somebody break down that play, and there's basically 2 options for Goff on that play, and one of them was throw underneath, which they had covered or throw deep. And I don't know that I mean, to be honest, like I understand that it looks terrible. Like the optics on that play are just horrific. And to me, my problem is the play call. I mean, you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, you have TJ Hockenson, Jamal Williams, DeAndre Swift was eligible, came back in this game.
Yep.
I might have run something like Hawk, St. Brown, both running backs in a formation that was basically like, we don't know where we're going to go here. I don't mind that they threw
options.
It. Right. But like where the play call was that, where it's basically this or, like, I guess that helps with Goff because it's like, I can look here, it's either there and I take it or I don't, and I have to go to the other thing or whatever. But like, I believe Josh Reynolds just dropped that ball.
I think didn't he have to lay out for it?
I mean, they're paying him $4 million. I mean, like,
yeah, but I mean, like when you're laying out like that far, when you hit the ground, there's probably a good 50-50 whether that just bounces right out.
Yeah, and I agree with that. However, if they had made that play, it's not the ball game. Well, I guess it is the ball game.
It is, yeah.
So
we turned it over there. They marched down for a touchdown. That's
right.
I want to say it's a 14-point swing, but it's definitely a 7-point swing.
Oh, yeah.
If we catch it, right?
I did not like the play call. I thought the play call did not give us enough optionality to be successful on the play. It so happens that they didn't convert on that play. Sure. You're not going to get all those. If he caught it, they're all heroes, right? So it's kind of those, like, you're either the GOAT or you're the villain. Yeah. Didn't know that we needed to take that kind of chance. So I guess I had a bigger problem with just the overall feel of the second half. Like, they just came out and it just seemed like all the momentum that they had in the first half was just completely gone.
Yeah.
Don't know what caused that. I mean, it looks like DeAndre Swift was not ready to come back. They have, I think Campbell came out in one of the press conferences this week and said we might have pushed him to come back too soon. He's not ready. So I would be, we always do, but we'll look at the practice reports, leading up to the Packers game this weekend. And hey, Dan, and see where he goes. But I would not be surprised if it was something like no practice, limited practice, and then he plays. But he did not look, I mean, he caught a touchdown pass, but he did not look like DeAndre Swift from the beginning of the season. And if he's not that player, I don't know that it's worth playing him.
Yeah. He needs to be that for more than 8 touches or whatever he got.
Yeah, I thought that, so I was kind of surprised. I looked at the snap counts for all players after the game on PFF, and I was really surprised at the disparity in the play calls between Swift and Williams. So Swift had something like 15 additional snaps than Williams did, something like that.
Really?
12. I know it's shocking to hear, right? But like when I think something like Williams had something like 39 snaps, and I think Swift was like in the low 50. I could be wrong, but like Swift did have more touches or like more snaps than Williams. And I thought Williams was by far the more effective player in that game. So like, I don't understand why Williams didn't see his snap count stay the same or increase in the second half. Maybe he turned an ankle. Maybe, I don't know, maybe something happened or they felt they needed to go in a different direction. Didn't enjoy it. So St. Brown, though, looks like he's back. He was like targeted 15 times. He had twice the number of targets as any other wide receiver. And, I think he had like 7 catches, for, kind of his standard role, right? Like he's he's going to be your 7 for 89 and maybe a touchdown kind of wide receiver. And he'll have, days that are way better than that. He'll have days that might be a little bit lower than that, but that's about what he can provide on it. Seems to be any game that he's not hurt. So it's good to see him kind of getting back into it. Hawk had a big play, but ultimately, I think that the philosophy coming into the second half was flawed. I think that there was, I think there were some good things. I mean, Kirby Joseph forced a fumble for the second week in a row. They won the turnover battle this week, proved to be not the difference in the game, but good to see somebody on the defense generating turnovers. So if turnovers are pretty much random, but like if Kirby Joseph is going to increase the chances of producing a turnover, great. Like, I don't know that you can take him out of the starting lineups. So pretty happy.
No, he was the highest graded defensive player that we had last week at 7.
And so like his run defense is not great, but like the two things there that I am very impressed with is his coverage grade, which is pretty much the whole thing, and he's tackling well.
Yeah.
So you go along with Jeff Okudah, who like he had another solid game, tackling really well.
Yep.
And then like the other people that we have here at the top that are, playing like starters, Anzalone, tackled well this week. Harris tackled well this week. So I was pleased with the effort that the defense put out. Like, I know that they gave up a bunch of points again, but like we are talking about the same three players basically every week, and that is Hutchinson, Rodrigo, Kirby Joseph. All three of those guys are rookies. They are the best players at each level of the defense on this team currently. The next best player is probably Josh Paschal, the next best player is probably Jeff Okudah, but like Josh Paschal is leading this team in snap count since he came back. They are basically playing him every defensive snap since he came back.
Yeah, more or less.
So I think that you're going to see McNeil, Paschal, Hutch as pretty much the cornerstones of this defensive line, at least for the rest of this season.
Yep. And
then we will see about what they do with Romeo Okwara. Are they, what is Charles Harris's future on this team? Does a Levi Nwuzurike come back and is able to play again? I am holding out hope that he will. So there are some moving pieces. Like Anzalone's contract is up at the end of the season. I would look to bring in a veteran to play alongside him and draft a rookie, to go along. Derek Barnes seems to be playing a lot of middle linebacker. Seems to be playing well in run defense at least. So he's probably your 8-in-the-box linebacker that comes in. And if we hadn't lost Tracy Walker, he was playing well leading up to when he got hurt. I think that this could be different, but it's not, right? That's not reality. That's a what-if scenario.
Yeah. And then the guys that, like you mentioned before, Oruwariye taking major steps back, 37.4, guys like Isaiah Parker or AJ Parker, Julian Okwara, like these guys have not been playing well at all. And that's been and this is the worst. I think this is the worst grade that Rodrigo has had all season.
Yeah, and
a rookie 6th rounder. This is what you should expect every game.
Sure. Scroll up a little bit for me.
Shall do.
So he was basically bad in run defense, but he had a good pass rush in this game, which he had at least 1 sack and 1 fumble recovery.
Yep.
But he got what he's typically good at is coverage. Like if you go back and look at his other coverage grades from the previous couple of games, he was in the 70s at a minimum. So he had trouble with Gesicki. He had trouble with the third wide receiver running over the middle. He had trouble with Mostert. And the entire Dolphins team is built on one premise, and that is speed.
Fast. Yep.
Yeah. So everybody that they have on that team is fast. And like, as much as I like Malcolm Rodriguez, and I think he does some really good things, when you're matched up against somebody, I've played against athletes in like high school and college that were faster than I am. And it doesn't matter how good you are. If you're not near them and you can't affect them, they're going to just destroy you. And so I think that's what's happened here this week with the Dolphins. I didn't think our offensive line played well at all. I really had some critiques about the way they played. And I looked at PFF's grades, and PFF graded them pretty well. And I looked at it, and I was like, God, it's not matching up with what I see. What am I not getting here?
So what is the one thing I've said almost every game, because it ends up that way? If your quarterback is 13th, 14th, 15th best on your offense, you're probably not going to win the game. I will give Goff props. He was our number one rated offensive player. And that's what you need. You need your quarterback to be your number one offensive player. Hey, Shan, thanks for joining. And he finally was 85. Like he played well.
In the first half, he played really well. Yeah.
I mean, in the second half, he played okay. I just think, kind of like to your point with the one play call, I wasn't a big fan of the play calls.
I wasn't
dropping passes. Like our run game was less efficient. Like overall, it was not great.
No, it was not. And like, if you go to where Penei Sewell is, like he's got a starter level grade there. But if you scroll over to the right, he got flagged for 2 penalties.
Yeah.
And like they weren't just like nothing like, oh, false start or whatever at 1st and 10. Now you got to figure out, 1st and 15 the whole time. They were like impactful wrong moment penalties. And like, he's a very good player. I'm not really critiquing him or saying we should do anything about it. But like, I also would think that he is probably the most penalized offensive lineman on this squad. So,
so during that game, there was a stretch, and really for the Dolphins, it lasted. The stretch was the entire game. I have never seen a team get flagged for so many penalties.
Mm-hmm.
I think there were 6 or 7 we didn't even accept, but they lined up offside 4 times.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Like, I don't get that. Like, I mean, I understand if you're hopping off sides or you're just really itching, but to do it once and then, I mean, you'd think you're like, all right, that was a boneheaded play. I leaned in too far or whatever. But then to do it a second and third and fourth, it might have even been 5 times, but it was absolutely absurd. I've never seen that kind of thing happen so often. And every time they throw a flag, you could see their head coach look over at their like offensive coordinator and other coaches, like, what the hell is going on, guys? Like, how is this? How are you not benching some of these players? And it's a good thing they didn't, because they ended up beating us. But like, it was absurd the number of penalties that they had.
So the Dolphins had 7 accepted penalties for 55 yards, and Detroit had 6 for 30. So
how many were accepted? Do you know how many that were declined?
It's not. I'm on ESPN, so they don't go to that level of depth. But my thing is, like, this is another, I think, sign of progress that doesn't show up in the win column. Mm-hmm. So, like, we have talked a lot about the Lions need to not hurt themselves.
Yeah.
So in this game, they won the turnover battle. Between the two teams, they were the least penalized team. These are, I think, probably signs. I mean, if they can maintain this, like, moving forward, that's going to help lead to wins.
Yeah.
But like, we can only say that so often before people are going to be like, well, we need to fire the coaching staff. So
yeah. Well, that's so. One of the things that I want to kind of talk about today is to really kind of talk about kind of the next piece of this is a lot of the fan chatter on Brad Holmes.
Sure.
Because our defense has been bad and they've been costing us games.
Yep.
Aubrey Pleasant, who was just fired yesterday, I think. And then we'll get to TJ Hockenson, because I promised Zako we would.
Sure.
So I guess, what order do you want to take this in? You want to talk about Pleasant first, because he was the action item for the coaching staff?
No, let's talk about Hockenson, because Zako was I don't want to say adamant, but he was eager to talk about it, right?
Yeah. So all right, let's do it.
Let's throw him a bone here. So I have the trade up here on NFL.com. I'll read it out for everybody. TJ Hockenson was traded from the Detroit Lions to the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings receive tight end TJ Hockenson, a 23 4th-round pick and a 24 conditional 4th-round pick, which I believe is conditional on the Vikings winning a playoff game. Detroit receives a 2023 second-round pick and a 2024 third-round pick. So effectively, this trade is TJ Hockenson, so the Lions can upgrade from a fourth to a second in this upcoming draft, and we get their third-round pick in 2024, which would be an upgrade on our fourth-round pick, which we may not have to give up. So all in all, this looks like we are going to shed this player and his contract extension that's upcoming in order to upgrade resources this year and the following year in the draft. I think this works out for both teams. I think that Minnesota needs a weapon that they can pair with Justin Jefferson. They have been looking for a tight end now for a while. It's James Mitchell's season, according to Zakwa.
Yep.
And we had a James Mitchell sighting with his first NFL catch against Miami, so he's actually seeing game reps. So that's good. I would imagine that they elevate Shane Zylstra from the practice squad, and they would run with Brock Wright as the starter, Mitchell is the backup, Zylstra is the emergency tight end. And now the Lions have 5 picks in the top 60. Basically in the top 2 rounds. So if the draft was today, they'd have the number 1 pick. They'd have the 13th pick from the Rams. Keep losing, Rams. Thank you. They would have the first pick, what would end up being the 32nd overall pick, because Miami forfeited one of their picks for the Tom Brady, Sean Payton nonsense. So they would have the number 1 pick in the second round, and then they would have the Vikings pick, which right now is late second round. So. And then, of course, we'd have the, 95th overall pick, top of the third round. So, yeah.
$9.5 million.
Well, yeah. So I have to imagine with the Lions are going to shed some amount of contract, but like the real win here, as far as I am concerned, and I think the reason why this gets done is that he has the next year on a rookie deal as well, and then he is up for an extension. So,
next year he was a $9.3 million, almost $9.4, I think, $million cap hit next year.
So if I look at trade pre-June 1st, I think the Lions are going to net something like $3 million in cap relief because of this trade, and then they get
for this year.
For this year. So that'll help with, the moving up and down of players off the practice squad and that kind of thing. And then next year, they will recoup that 9.3. So that's good. And then they do not have to worry about signing him to an extension. So I think I read 3 or 4 articles about this is why the Lions traded TJ Hockenson. And one of the articles I read, and I believe it was from The Athletic, said TJ Hockenson has taken note of the other kinds of contracts that tight ends have received at the top of the tight end market. He is going to get this shit out of here.
Yep. I'm locking them.
Thank you. All right, good.
Poof gone.
Stupid bots. So that to me is the benefit. Now here's where I think everyone's going to have a problem with it. This trade was made for the long term. This trade was made to shed eventual contract. This trade was made to upgrade draft resources after this season. Those are both, to fans, long-term thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it continues to speak to what Sheila Hamp came out and said. There was a teardown, and we are in I cannot talk today. I apologize for being so start and stop, but we are in the process of doing the rebuild, and this is a part of it. I can't believe that any Lions fan would look at the team as constructed right now and say, hey, rebuild's working, right? So that means it's still on, and there's still things to do. And so
what you mean is our Lions fans shouldn't be saying the rebuild is done.
Correct.
I do think the rebuild is working. We're moving in the right direction, right?
Yeah, and
is working, even if the win-loss column doesn't show it this year. This is year 2 of a complete rip down, tear down, start from scratch, rebuild of the roster, the culture, the management, the coaching.
And like, I hope that my biggest hope is that this time next year, the Lions are able to live up to the expectation that the fan base had for them this season.
Yeah.
So my hope is this. My hope is they acquire more draft resources. Now they're, 5 picks in the top 60, 64 is not bad. You get picks inside the top 100, you're getting quality players, or you should be, and so you add up and down this roster. You will have some money that you can go out into free agency and sign not a tier 1 free agent, but like a wave 2, a wave 3 tier agent, somebody hopefully that it can come onto this roster and be like, I know what my assignment is. Hey Rumble. Work. My God, it's 7:30. Someone that can come onto the roster and just know where they're supposed to be, not a fuck up, basically, right? So happy to see that happen. And I think that there will be some guys, good players from bad teams that are going to be available that you might be able to get for reasonable money, not crazy money, right? Yeah. So, and we'll see. We'll just have to see how the free agency shakes out, and we'll move into the draft, but we're going to need to make moves.
This trade ultimately, I think, is good. I know a lot of the questions that I've seen in different Lions fan sites was, I can't believe we traded them in division. Why would we do that? And a couple things. Number one, that was probably the best price.
Yes.
That was probably the best offer, and you have to do that, like as a matter of course. Number two, I think that we have reshedded a player that is essentially playing the same quality, more or less, as Brock Wright, a $1 million player, and he's going to be 9.3. So, and like I think it was Zeka had mentioned that tight ends are kind of they're easily replaceable. We can find a suitable tight end pretty inexpensively, pretty easily. There's a lot of them out on the market. We can draft them in the middle rounds, as we talked about the other day, or a couple episodes ago. So we got rid of somebody who was being overpaid and underperforming. And yes, we sent them to an in-division team, but the best part is we also took assets from that team.
Correct. Yes.
Quality assets from our division opponent and saddled them with an overpaid, underperforming player. And I'm like, win-win. Like, to me.
Right. So there's been discussions. Black Friday in the NFL. There's a Black Monday in the NFL, I believe, which is when coaches start getting fired.
Yeah, Black Friday is after the trade deadline, Shan.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she didn't know. It's fine.
She didn't know.
So, and I agree with that. Like, if you wanted to go out onto the free agent market and sign somebody like you are a Los Angeles Rams fan, you pay attention to Los Angeles, a Tyler Higbee type, a CJ Uzama, somebody like that, someone that's going to be able to like be a solid player, like Brock Wright plus, basically, right? Like maybe James Mitchell becomes that player. I don't know. Well, he's going to get a look here the second half of the season. But if you wanted to go out and sign someone like that, Hayden Hurst, that's in Cincinnati right this year, he is on a 1-year deal. I would imagine that with Joe Burrow's ever looming massive contract extension that is on the horizon for this team, that they are not going to look to invest money into the seasons where his extension is going to take effect. So, like, does Hayden Hurst end up on the tight end market? Could you get Hayden Hurst for $5 million a year? Something like that. Like, it is a position that is available on the free agent market, end sentence. So, like, you can't go onto the free agent market and sign a Jonathan Ogden or a Tony Baselli, right? But you can find someone like a Tyler Higbee or a CJ Uzama.
Yeah.
So I think that the access to his replacement is a lot greater than some of these other things. I mean, like, One Pride's in chat. One Pride says, why are you trading him to the Vikings? Like, I don't know that it matters, to be honest. Like, I am not worried about playing against TJ Hockenson 2 times a year, you know, and it's like.
And Zeka mentioned, like, when our offense was doing so well, Hawk wasn't doing much. He wasn't a big part of that. He had one game that was good.
He had a monster game once.
He had one monster game that we lost.
Right.
And he had one good play this last game. I mean, like, he really hasn't done a lot. So I'm not worried about him being with the Vikes. And the fact that we got to take quality, important draft assets from an in-division rival, I think is worth sending them our overpriced, underperforming player. Like, it's kind of win-win-win.
So I do believe that intra-division trades are going to be happening more and more, right?
Yep.
This is the second time that Holmes has traded with the Vikings in the division. He has not traded with the Bears or Packers yet. He has not made many trades. He made the Trinity Benson trade. He has made some draft day trades. Like we got the pick from Malcolm Rodriguez, I believe, because he traded down in the 5th and then switched picks in the 5th. And then he acquired the 6th round pick that turned into Malcolm Rodriguez in that trade. So, like, he's willing to make moves, you know, and like anytime you're willing to make a move, you should always get the best price. And if this was it and you're not sold on, I mean, they didn't draft TJ Hockenson.
Yeah.
You know, so like, I think what this says is, you know, we're gonna make moves. And like, I think that having maybe a little fear on this team that's like, well, okay, they've shown that they're willing to trade a guy that we thought was kind of a corner piece. I'm gonna make sure I'm in the weight room, you know, every time that I have, you know, like if someone else is in there, I'm gonna be in there too.
Yeah.
So it's because you hate those teams more, Zakwa. So
this is true.
So I mean, like, so let's transition to Brad Holmes here.
I was just kidding. This is a perfect opportunity because some of the things that we're seeing is Brad Holmes is terrible. He only dressed injured players. He has made bad, you know, his draft classes aren't good. He's not drafting well, and his signings are bad. And I keep thinking to myself, I mean, most of that is subjective, but some of it's also nearly objectively wrong.
Correct.
Right?
It's
like,
all wrong.
When we look at, I mean, some of it's subjective, but like a lot of it is, I mean, it's too early to tell. Sure, Rodriguez is having a great year this year. But if he peaked last game, then maybe that wasn't a slammer of a pick, right? But I don't think that's usually the case, unless you're named Amani Oruwari. You know what? God, neither of us could talk today, Drew.
Yeah, so like Zake was making some points here in chat that I want to touch on. So like, let's talk about Holmes's draft history here, right? He comes in 2 weeks into his administration. Matthew Stafford has a sit down with ownership, says, hey, I'm not up for another rebuild. Could you look for a trade partner? They go out on the market. And I know that Denver, Carolina were interested, and they ended up going with Los Angeles's offer, right? Okay, so they net two firsts and a third, and Jared Goff. Okay, so Jared Goff's the quarterback. They used that 3rd round pick on Ife Melifonwu right off the bat. So he has barely played. It is looking like he is on a trajectory to bust. That's a bummer. Also, a pick they would not have had if they had not made the trade. I did like the return for Hockenson. I mean, you always want more, but like when I look at this and I think, okay, that's pretty good. So his first draft class, he ends up going Sewell, Onwuzurike, McNeil, St. Brown, Barnes. They were right after each other. That's kind of funny. And maybe some other guys at the back end that I'm not remembering. But Sewell and St. Brown are clearly hits. McNeil is playing a ton. Onwuzurike didn't blow the doors off anything his rookie season. He is hurt this season, and we will have to see what his timeline looks like for return. But you got a top 10 right tackle in the NFL, and you got a wide receiver that you would never have thought would have produced for this team. You got a starter at defensive tackle. It's a pretty good draft. I mean, to be honest, 3 starters. Fast forward to the next draft this last season. The Jaguars make an inexplicable choice at number 1, take Trayvon Walker. Detroit gets mad. The NFL gets mad at Detroit for how fast they ran to the podium to take Aiden Hutchinson. Then they trade up for Jameson Williams. Yes, he was hurt, so that's fine.
There was some risk there, right?
Of course.
They're ignoring the fact that there was a little risk, but the upside is he would have been a top 5 overall pick, most likely.
Yes, he would have been the first wide receiver off the board.
Right. And he's coming back from an injury, what would have been scary 20 years ago, but is very common to come back from now.
Yes, correct. So, and after this draft and they were interviewed about, how they felt about these players, well, no one knows that one, Pride. I mean, you draft players and you assume that they all hit. I mean, no one has ever drafted a player thinking that they weren't going to.
Yeah.
So.
But I mean, just looking at his college career, he was a standout. I mean, there was a reason why he was going to be the first wide receiver off the board. So Will he hit? We don't know. Is it likely? I mean, probably.
The Lions certainly seem to think so. Right.
Yeah.
So then you drafted Pascal in round 2. So he had a groin issue, I believe, or something to that effect, and that kept him out for 5 or 6 games. You drafted Kirby Joseph, who has played like a starter ever since Tracy Walker went down. Then you ended up going, now I'm going to lose it. After Joseph. Malcolm Rodriguez, you hit on in the 6th round. So so in these 2 draft classes, they have the starters that they have found are Hutchinson, McNeil, Pascal, Rodrigo, Joseph, Sewell, and probably Jameson Williams when he is fully healthy, right? That's 5 or 6 players. So in 2 draft class, you are on par with what any GM is hoping to accomplish. Now, it's also, it's the Lions, right? Their roster was just bereft of talent. So these players are getting an opportunity to play because the team is so bad. So would they be a starter on, say, the Bills or the Chiefs? I don't know. Maybe not. But they are in Detroit, and so they have to produce. And so I think the players that we talked about have. Now we're going to see about James Mitchell, right? We're going to see about Onwuzurike when he comes back. We're going to see about Jameson Williams. But just because they haven't played yet doesn't mean they are detriments to this team.
Right.
It means they could be positives in the future. Just no one thinks it because they're not helping right now. It's not showing up in the win-loss column right now.
Yep.
So
whenever you are drafting not for just year 1.
Correct.
You're drafting for years 1 through 4. And if they're a first rounder, hopefully a year 5. Hopefully they're good enough that you want to keep around a 5th year. So
exactly,
getting Williams where we did gives us an opportunity to get 4 full years in, if we get that 5th year option, plus whatever experience he gets this year.
Sure.
So he doesn't play for 7 games, 10 games, maybe 12 games. But if he gets 3-4 games in, that's quality experience. Plus we get him for the next minimum of 3 up to 4 more seasons.
Yeah.
And hopefully he does hit. But looking at here's the actual draft class. You don't have to remember, but
sure.
Sewell, he's a hit. He's a starter. He's one of the top 5-10-ish right tackles in the league. Onwuzurike, he played okay. He was a starter for us. He got hurt, which is a bummer. McNeil has played. He's been a starter. Melifonwu, maybe a little bit of a miss there.
Yeah.
St. Brown, He was the 4th best receiver last year.
Bullseye.
Wideout. He was, I think, 16th wideout taken or something like that, and he was top 4. Right. Barnes has been a depth guy, and I was a little bummed. I was actually kind of excited about Jamar Jefferson.
It's on the practice squad,
and he just didn't do the things.
So Zake was asking a great question.
So did this move sway you guys any more or less into thinking we'll be drafting a quarterback this year? And if so, why?
So assuming the draft is today, right?
Yep.
And the Lions maintain this position, you have to.
Yeah.
And the reason that you have to is that you don't know where you're going to be in 2024. And so there are benefits to drafting a quarterback outside of getting that player. Like, so I think Zaquo posted up here, like, they can have X amount of cap space if they cut, these players, and if you cut Jared Goff, you're going to save $20 million right then. Right. And you're not going to have a $30 million backup quarterback. Right. Now they could keep Jared Goff on the roster and have him be the starter and sit whoever they draft for a season. That's a possibility. To me, if you're drafting a guy 1, you play him week 1. Sorry. Fuck it. So to me, if I am the general manager of the Detroit Lions, if they are drafting number 1 overall heading into the 2023 draft in free agency, I would cut Jared Goff or try and trade him. I would get the cap savings so I can spend it then in free agency. Mike, no one cares about Purdue University. And I go in and I draft Bryce Young. And I'm happy about it, and I move forward.
And you just saved $30 million.
Pretty much. $30 million. And Bryce Young or whoever they draft there at number 1 overall will be $10-11 million for 4 years, 5 years, and you have a window to take this team from what you're talking about right now to, yeah, exactly. And maybe you bring in like a veteran that can like mentor and like, hey, if an emergency comes up or you get COVID or some shit, like you can be like, I can play a game, right? And that sounds fine. You would have the money to do so because you're not paying Jared Goff $15 million more than he's worth. And then you can take that $20 million or $15 million or whatever it is that you're going to spend, and you can go get a depth cornerback. You can go get, someone to replace Alex Anzalone. You have flexibility now. Like when the trade market comes up today, you're not sellers. You can maybe acquire a player. They don't have the room to do that. That's why they didn't trade for another guy. That kind of thing. Like you're going to need to re-sign. Do you want to re-sign Jamal Williams? Do you want to re-sign Craig Reynolds? Sorry. Like you need cap flexibility to do that. So if you don't, we're going to talk about that next one, Pride. So, and if you don't do stuff like that, then you're gonna have a really hard time. So, I mean, I would, if the Lions finish the number 1 overall pick, I would say Jared Goff is done. I would also cut Rockers for sure, because cutting him is $10 million right there. That pays for your whole rookie class. So, and
I mean, we get rid of Goff. It's 20.6. Drop Cora. That's another 7.5. So now we're at 28.1 essentially. Brockers is 10 million. That's 38 million. Vitae is 6.5, right? So that's going to be essentially 45 once you start, because that's a half and all that. So 45 million. If we want to part ways with Charles Harris, I don't know if we do or not. That's 4. Khalif Raymond is 2, and I just don't think he's that good.
Yeah, there's
a lot of money that we can just scrub from our cap at this point and be in much better shape.
I would say that with the dead money coming off the books, you're going to get a boost there with the ad revenue going up and the new contracts kicking in. You're going to get a boost there. Like, I don't know that you need to cut maybe an Okwara or a whomever, like a Vitae even. Like, if they want to, fine. But the other thing is, like, on that page that we were just looking at, they need to sign 18 players from that group that's just still has a contract year, in order to field a 53-man roster. So you're going to get 6 to 8 players in the draft. So now you need to find 10. Like I don't think that they need to make their job any harder. So I mean, if you keep a Romeo Okwara and he can go into the season healthy, if you can keep a Vaitai and he can go into the season healthy, at least then you might be able to concentrate your free agency and your draft picks in more certain areas and like throw a lot of resources at the secondary, finish off the linebacking core. Like, do you need to restock on even like something as simple as running backs? And like
do what the Red Wings did.
Sure.
Right? So the Red Wings were DFL. They were dead freaking last for almost like 2 years in a row or something. And we never got the lottery. So we never got the number 1 overall pick, but we made it count. So we got a guy like Moritz Seider, who was the rookie of the year and is probably a top 10 defenseman in the entire NFL his rookie season. Dude's just a stud. So he drafted really well, and then he was able to fill in those gaps because we have the cap space with middle tier aging veterans that can come in and contribute and mentor. So like those are the kind of things that we can do when we have that extra $45 million from cutting guys like Brockers and Goff, Vaitai, and let some of the younger guys come in, replace them with good draft picks, and then just get those, $4 to $7 million, veterans or second contract guys that maybe they were okay, but nothing, not elite, and kind of build that roster out that way.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so to move into the last topic here today, about Aubrey Pleasant, I don't think it's a very good move. So to me, this is appeasement. So I think, okay. So I guess what we should say is, I don't know. I guess I don't know enough about what's really going on behind the scenes to be able to effectively judge this. Like,
right.
What I thought about Aubrey Pleasant doesn't mesh with what I have now seen this week, right? So here's what I don't think. I don't think the Lions would fire him to be 100% a scapegoat.
Right.
So I do, however, to me, this is what makes more sense. In his press conference yesterday, Dan Campbell said, like, he was asked why they fired him. And he basically said, like, everybody needs to be on the same page, like marching in the same direction or whatever. And he said, like, the mentals all need to be the same. Like, everyone needs to be on the same page, thinking about the game in the same way. And so to me, because they fired Aubrey Pleasant, what that says is there was some kind of disconnect between what he was doing and what Dan Campbell wanted. Almost said Jim Schwartz.
I had read that the defensive backs, the cornerbacks, they did not play the game per the game plan.
Interesting.
I don't know what specifically they mean by they didn't play per the game plan, but essentially it sounded like they had planned to do more like, bump and run kind of thing. Like we're gonna hit them at the line and make them fight through us, and they didn't do it. Something along those lines is kind of what I gathered. And if that's the case, like if that's the game plan and your guys didn't do that and you were the coach, then it is kind of on you. Like the buck does stop with you. That is your position group, and if they're not going to follow the game plan, that's on you. So if that's the case, that might be why it happened now.
That scenario is the one that seems the most likely to me, based on all the things that we've heard and seen transpire. So, I mean, maybe he did one pride, but like, there's also a universe in which when your boss comes to you and says, we need to do this, and then you don't do it, you get fired, And so, and if that's the case, if that is what happened, and I may never know that,
then a lot of stuff that stays inside. Internal things are internal.
Right.
So it's I've seen that in just like my personal work life where maybe I'm familiar with something going on with one of my staff members, and maybe they've been sick, or maybe they got family issues, or maybe they got something going on, and that's causing some performance issues or whatever. And then people are like, well, why does this person get so much leeway? Their boss isn't dealing with it. Well, you don't know what is going on behind the scenes. And that happened to me probably 20 years ago. A good friend of mine he just had a medical issue, and it caused him problems. He'd come in late 3-4 times a week, but the boss knew it.
Right.
He knew what was going on. Nobody else did, because it's none of their damn business.
Right.
So everybody's like bitching, why is Phil coming in late and not getting, written up?
Is Phil not his real name?
Phil is not his real name. I would not do that to Phil.
Good. Poor Phil. Yep.
But those are the kind of things that it's probably going on. Like, there's probably some other things back there. Campbell doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would scapegoat somebody else. He seems to be a guy that would take more ownership than is necessary and fall on the sword more often than to throw somebody else under the bus. But maybe not. I don't know. Maybe that's the way that he's keeping his job or something. I don't know. But like,
that shit is real.
More behind the scenes than what we know.
Yeah. So to me, I have a heart, like, based upon what I have seen out of Aubrey Pleasant, like from my exposure to Aubrey Pleasant, this is a surprise.
Yeah.
There is a scenario where his firing makes sense to me. I don't think that you're going to get this group of players to play better because he's not here. And they said that, I think it's Bucher, the safeties coach, is going to take over for him. And if, like, you're that guy, the only thing that you know that you need to do really is not do what Aubrey Pleasant did, right?
Right.
That's the only thing you can't do.
Yeah.
Everything else is on the table. So
follow the game plan.
Pretty much.
And then we should be fine. Even if we suck, you follow the game plan.
Now, to me, if Amani Araraway is trying to jam Jalen Waddle at the line, the Lions are not winning on Sunday.
Yeah.
Like, Jalen Waddle is going to figure out some way to get around Amani Araraway or AJ Parker or whomever it is. But, like, do what your boss tells you is something I've always struggled with, because I've always thought that I'm smarter than my bosses. But, like, they can fire your ass, and that looks like what has happened here.
Yeah.
So my take on it is, I was hoping that Aubrey Pleasant and all of our coaching staff would make it to the end of the season, because whether it's Aaron Glenn, Aubrey Pleasant, who knows, maybe even Kelvin Shepard, they're all African-American coaches who, with 2 years on the same team, if they had left for a higher position with another team, the Lions get draft compensation. And, like, I know that's terrible to say, and it sounds super greedy, but, like, the way that I look at it is, you're helping to develop minority coaching in the NFL, which is something that the league desperately needs, and you can earn an incentive to it. And this team needs every incentive that it can possibly get its hands on.
Yeah.
And so if it was, so, like, I also don't think, like, if this was a one-time thing, you don't fire somebody like this for a one-time thing.
Right. Which is why I think there's probably something else going on.
Right.
This is probably not the only time they didn't follow the script or whatever it was. Whatever the reason was, it's probably not the first time.
Right. Like, I know at my job, I get, like, strikes, right? Like, Drew, dress code. Drew, get on to work on time or whatever. Like,
Drew, wear pants.
Yeah. Wear pants. Right? Thank you, Michael. So, like, you get, like, what's ever called, like, developmental training, or, like, there's a process, so they just can't, like, the idea of, like, at-will employment is kind of a falsehood in the workplace nowadays. Like, you're not just firing somebody because you don't like them.
Yeah.
Like, you're getting strikes. Your
doctor's expensive. Right?
Yeah,
it's expensive in time. It's expensive in money.
Right.
It's expensive in morale. Like, those are things you don't turn over just because.
Right.
You work with them. You create a plan of assistance or whatever it is, whatever your business terms it. But you want them to get better. You don't want to get rid of them. You want them to get better.
Right. That's what leaders do, right?
Yes.
I will say to Dan Campbell, fix your goddamn body language, dude. Like, he looks sad during the press conferences. Like, he is like, yeah, I know we got to be better. I just had to fire a guy. And like, I know that he feels things, and I probably wouldn't be thrilled to talk to reporters right after I had to fire someone I've been working with for a year and a half as well.
Yeah.
But like, fake it until you make it, basically.
Yeah.
I do want to touch on what Joey said here in chat.
Yeah,
if you drafted a quarterback number 1 overall and don't put all your money into your O-line, you ruin that player's career, in his opinion. Yeah, that's probably a pretty solid opinion. The NFL's taught us that. Good thing that they have put a bunch of money into their offensive line.
Yeah.
So like
Sewell, we drafted.
Sewell is going to come up for a contract
extension. The highest paid center.
Yeah, next year his contract goes up.
Yep, Decker is a top 10 left tackle. But, I mean, his contract isn't terrible, which is great, actually, at this point.
You know, and you paid Vitae like he was a right tackle.
Yep.
And moved him to guard. And Jonah Jackson is on a rookie deal. So, like, that's why, but you cannot pay all 5 of those guys.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, it's not just the O-line, right? If you have a quarterback and a great O-line, but you have no targets,
right?
You have what we had last year.
So if let's say, just because I like him better currently than the other quarterbacks, like let's say they draft Bryce Young.
Mm-hmm.
Next season, theoretically, Bryce Young walks into this. Decker, Jackson, Ragnow, question mark, probably Vitae, Sewell as his offensive line. His wide receivers are Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, question mark. Right now, that's probably Josh Reynolds. Okay. Tight end, unknown. Running back, DeAndre Swift. If that's not a decent enough situation for a rookie to step into, I'm not really sure what it could be. Now, so like what everyone seems to think is the majority of the problems on this team are defensive, and I probably would agree that they are mostly defensive. But yeah, like what One Pride says right here, I could very easily see the number 1 overall pick, if that is indeed what we end up with, going to the quarterback position, as it should.
Right.
And then using other high premium draft assets, the other first round pick, now 2 second round picks, a high third round pick, all going to multiple levels of the defense. So like, think about this draft class, which I've been working with here. If you go something like Bryce Young, number 1 overall, and this is assuming no trades, you can go like number 13, somebody like Cam Smith from cornerback from South Carolina, Joey Porter, cornerback from Penn State, get someone on the outside across from Jeff Okudah, who you're probably picking up his 5th-year option after this season. That's your first round. Second round, top of the round, you could take somebody like Gervon Dexter, defensive tackle from Florida. You could bump Pascal to outside big rush end, stand Hawk up. Okay. Now, with your second late round pick, you can look at linebackers, right? You could look at Henry To'o from Alabama. You could look at my favorite player at linebacker currently, which is Ivan Pace out of Cincinnati. I think he would be exceptional to pair with Malcolm Rodriguez. And then you could even look at somebody like a safety like Brian Branch from Alabama. You might even be able to pick up somebody later on, you know, because we don't know what Tracy Walker's Achilles timeline looks like yet. So is he going to play game 1 next year? I don't know. So, but Kirby Joseph is probably going to continue to play free safety. So you're going to look for a guy that
is going to continue to get better, hopefully, right?
Yeah. I mean, like there is a safety, Jonathan Abrams, I think, from the Raiders that might end up on the free agency market. They didn't pick up his 5th-year option. And like if you needed an in-the-box safety that's going to be relatively cheap, like there's somebody that you might be able to go get in free agency. And then if you wanted to draft somebody like a Darnell Washington from Georgia to be your number 1 overall tight end and get him at like the back of the second, even at the top of the second, or, you know, someone like Alabama's tight end, or the kid Dalton Kincaid, I think, from Utah or Iowa State. Like you have receiving options in the mid rounds that you can fill out this roster. But I mean, like if you go one guy on each level of the defense at some point between the first, second, and the top of the third round, then like, what are we really complaining about? You know, and then you fill out the rest of the the rest of the roster with like decently priced free agents, not going to break the bank for anybody on the free agency market. And then you go into 2023 seasons with the expectations you had in 2022, and finally the fucking expectations might align with the talent on this team. Yeah. So like, that's my thing. I would
be upset with another wide receiver in that third round.
I would not be upset with another wide receiver because you have to replace DJ Chark, assuming that they don't re-sign him.
Yeah.
Now, we're still going to pay DJ Chark for the next 2 years, but he won't be on the roster, you know? So like, what do you do there? You know, so he's been kind of a failed experiment for me.
You're not going to hit all of them.
Right.
You want to hit as many as you can. Obviously, you want to hit all, but you're not going to.
Yeah,
so
Miles.
I popped into chat because I'm kind of curious what Zeka and One Pride, Joey D, and even Shannon, if she's still sticking around with us.
Kepke.
Dan Spanos, like how would you prioritize the positions for our picks? We need quarterback and then what? Defense, edge rusher, wide receiver, linebacker, safety, corner. Like, how would you kind of rate like the order in which you would go with those in our positions of need, right? Not necessarily best available, but like positions of need.
So we're only gonna dedicate a couple minutes to this.
Yeah,
and we're gonna have to go. But like, Zakwa says, if we could get Miles Murphy with that second first rounder, I'd love that. Me too. He's fun. I like him. I would love to have him, on the outside taking over the Aquara spot, and then have Hutch on the other. Like, the problem with Hutch this year is that he has had zero help. The rest of the roster doesn't have as many sacks as Aiden Hutchinson does.
Yeah.
I mean, he needs a running buddy. He needs a tag team partner. And One Pride says, I can see us signing Deron Payne. Yeah, absolutely. You could see now if he's going to demand like top shelf money, then no. But like, I would rather if Deron Payne says, I want you to pay me like a top 5 defensive tackle, I'm not going to.
Right.
I'm going to sign someone like Poona Ford from Seattle or whatever. Or like, if you do want to go big, like I'll try and target like a Marcus Davenport, who the Saints are not going to be able to keep on their roster. So
they're gonna have a yard sale, aren't they? The Saints, they're almost
Jesus Christ, dude. So the guy Jason Fitzgerald at the overthecap.com wrote an article about what the Saints need to do to get back to like cap neutrality. So basically have no money. It's every starter on their team, basically 22 players, needs to make either some kind of revision to their contract or they need to be removed from the roster in some way that's the most efficient.
Yeah,
so
crazy.
I do think that the Lions could need a linebacker, but they need one linebacker because you have Derek Barnes on a rookie deal, you have Rodrigo on a rookie deal, and there's one more. I think that you need to re-sign Board and Pittman for special teams purposes. So like if you're going to carry 5 linebackers, like you have one starting caliber linebacker. So like, do you go out and find that guy in free agency, or do you like? I don't want to spend a second round pick on a linebacker if I don't have to, But DT, edge, corner, linebacker, all that stuff is potentially on the board. It's just we're going to have to see how free agency plays out. We're going to have to see how the draft falls, like where you're picking, that kind of stuff.
Now, here's that article I think that you were looking at. You're going to need to free up they're currently over $50 million over the salary cap for next year.
To get to zero cap space.
To get to zero, yes.
And then here's the thing. They do all of this. They get back to zero. They still have to put a roster on the field. You still have to have 53 players.
Yeah.
So, like, you can't stop at 55 million. You're going to have to get to, like, 80.
Well, this was the February 2022 one. This was going into this year.
Yeah, go to overthecap.com. It's the first article. It's like one of the first articles. But, yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting read, but it's basically like the right there. So, like, it's basically like the Saints have got themselves in such a bad position by the way that they choose to manage their cap that, like, they effectively cannot hold on to players. And then they traded all their draft picks, so they cannot bring in fresh new contracts in order to alleviate some of this damage. So, like, they are going to have to continue to kick the can down the road with some of them, cut some of them, trade some of them, waive some of them, whatever extend some of them in certain instances, and you can't do all these things optimally. Like if there is a it's this contract's good in the first year, but it's terrible in the second and third year, like you have to do that so that you can get the cap relief immediately. So like even the moves that they can make to try and get back under like a healthy cap are suboptimal. So like this is a team that is like, when I talk about cap management all the time, and everyone's like, cap doesn't matter, you can just print money. Nah. Like that's just, it's such bullshit for this exact reason. Now, like the Eagles were in the same position almost that the Saints were in now, but their GM made a series of trades and brought in a huge influx of rookie and 1-year deals. And now their cap outlook is like, we're going to be able to make this work, and like we have to juggle a little bit maybe, and we're not going to be able to keep everybody, but like we're set up, like we're okay. And like it's going to be a fire sale in New Orleans.
I know, and that'll be great for everybody that wants to cheap trinkets to throw in the.
I'll bet 3 Saints end up on the Bears this offseason.
I can see that. Yeah. I can see that. One of the things that I've noticed in the chat though is we have a pretty consistent prioritization. Zeka has quarterback, then DT or edge, then corner, then linebacker. And One Pride has quarterback, DT, cornerback, linebacker, like the same starting. And then he also has safety, wide receiver, and running back as the rest of his prioritization. Mm-hmm. I'd say, that all looks really, really close.
It's hard to argue that there's a position group that they don't need to address, like offensive lines probably. But even then, like they're losing most of their backups this offseason. So like you will need to address offensive line depth at some point in this offseason. So wherever they choose to do that.
Yeah. But we'll have, there's going to be a lot of cheap guys there's going to be a lot of people cut from other teams. There's going to be a lot of people that didn't make their second contract with their other teams that are not going to be your elite go-to guys that you can pretty easily fill out a roster. So what's going to end up happening is we're going to fill out our roster with some of these $2, $3, $4 million guys. People are going to be like, he couldn't even make the such and such team and nobody else wanted him. They're going to complain, but they have to understand that it's still probably an upgrade over what we had. They're probably just there for depth, and we need to field the team. So we're going to have to make some of those moves. But nobody ever likes them. They're not the sexy moves. They're not the, I just got Devontae Adams.
Worked out great.
Yeah, that's going great for them, right? Both teams, actually. The Packers are on a 4-game losing streak.
I have money on Detroit. I have money on Detroit to win this weekend. So
I'm not as confident as you, but one of us has to win.
Correct. It'll be me.
Or do we?
Don't throw that tie shit out there. I don't want to hear it. Ties in professional sports are ridiculous.
Yep.
So
even in the NHL, they stopped doing ties, and now they go to
smart
3-on-3, and then a shootout. They're like a fan is going to go home either happy because they won or sad because they lost every game. Never just disappointed that there was a tie. Like there was no decision. 3 hours and no decision. That's bullshit.
Yeah. So the Packers made no moves today. Their roster was not upgraded or is improved in any considerable method. Their defenseman's been playing like crap. Their offensive line has been bad, and their receivers can't. Hey, Crimson, what's up, man? We're just ending the show, unfortunately.
Sorry, it's on demand though, so just
Yeah, you can watch it at your leisure, but and their wide receivers can't catch things. And Aaron Rodgers right now does not appear to be a quarterback that can help the people below him rise above, right? So I think that what the Lions should do is just go in and tee off on fucking their running back Aaron Jones, whatever his name is.
Yep.
And just be like, if you beat us with everybody else, cool. But not this guy.
Yeah.
So, and then if the Lions can, I do love the trade. I think the Lions can pull this one out. I believe it's also at home. Is that correct?
I believe it is. Yeah. Yeah,
I think they're.
I think we're in
end of the year
at the end of the season.
Yeah, so I think the Lions pull this one out. So let's keep our fingers crossed. Hope the ball bounces our way. Get a W. Keep everybody kind of like let the breath they've been holding in out and just kind of calm down for a minute.
RELAX. Relax. I'm gonna do the Aaron Rodgers.
Hunter. I don't know who Hunter is. Brock Wright's the starting tight end. That's who it is.
Yeah.
Did you mean Brock Wright?
I don't know who the Hunter would have been.
Oh, I'm so tired of Michigan.
Well, it's we're kind of a little bit long, which is fine. It was fun, and if we weren't longs, Crimson never would have been able to see us.
No, we wouldn't have gotten to say hi. That's a bummer.
We just probably made his day. So you're welcome, Crimson, for running along. I'm glad you were able to see us. Gosh, we're humble, aren't we?
Meet us back here Tuesdays at 7 Eastern, where we will discuss the Detroit Lions win over the Green Bay Packers.
I hope so.
Yeah.
As always, please like, comment, subscribe. Tell your friends to like, comment, and subscribe. We've got, I think, 39 right now subscribers. Yep. So if we can get to 50, we're going to replace that Ravens hat on Drew's head. So help us get there. I know you all have friends. You all have Lions friends. Tell them about us. Appreciate it.
Mike's out here campaigning hard, everybody. Like, if you don't want to hear it, help us get to 50 subscribers and we'll shut up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm pretty optimistic on this team still. Like, I just don't think everything is negative. And I just hope they get a win and just like quiet everybody down a little bit. And then we can just get through the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Got to play the Bears twice still. That looks good. So, all right, Mike.
Casual GM podcast at gmail.com to
send us emails.
Questions, topics to talk about. We'll get to them on air, give you a shout out. Shannon
is such a bummer.
I am not your only Lions friend fan. There has to be more. So you'll have to just think about it.
Yeah. Come on, Shannon.
All right. Well, we appreciate y'all. So thank everybody for joining us. Drew, I'm going to go up and have some food now.
Excellent. Have a great dinner, Mike.
All right. We'll see you guys.
Bye.
Bye.